Welcome to Surroundscapes, an audio and video podcast series featuring a diverse collection of individuals with thought leaders from around the world addressing the general subject of the future of business. This content is curated by Bluesound Professional and focuses on the role of the oral and visual senses in creating unique, delightful, and compelling experiences to stimulate business. This first series of Surroundscapes is based on the future of hospitality and retail, the sector of the market in which Bluesound Professional is most active, and a market sector especially hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. In this video episode, I would like to introduce to you James Patten from Patten Studios. James is talking to us from New York and will talk to us about the amazing work that Patten Studios does with melding audio, video, and technology together to create these amazing experiences. So welcome, James.
Thank you, Graham. Thanks for having me. This is really an incredible moment for our industry because, Graham, as you just said, you know, it's really an unprecedented time in the context of COVID-19. And I just wanted to start off by backing up a bit, you know, to look at where we are with a little bit of a wider lens. So forget exactly when he said this, but Dr. Vivek Murthy, who was the former Surgeon General of the United States, said that he felt like the biggest health threat to the United States was loneliness. And that was before the pandemic started. So, of course, we have some other health threats that we're facing right now, but the way we're responding to those is, you know, only leads to creating more loneliness in people's lives. And I mention that because one of the things that, you know, when people looked at this so-called epidemic of loneliness before the coronavirus hit, a lot of people thought that technology was, you know, had a big role to play in why loneliness was an increasing trend, right? The idea that you know, we spend so much time with our personal devices, our phones, and on the web and social media that we don't really take the time to pay attention to the people who are right in front of us. And you know, looking at Patten Studio's work, in the big picture, you can think of a lot of what we do is trying to use technology to go in the opposite direction, to create opportunities for meaningful face-to-face connection in, you know, real physical space. And so I'll show you today a bunch of different examples of projects that we've done, mostly focusing on the retail and hospitality spaces. But I'll start out by showing you some of our experiments. A lot of what motivates us as a studio is these internal research and development projects that we do that then go on to inform the commercial work that we do for clients. And so, you know, as the quarantine start to lessen and people start to go back into public space, I think that, you know, it's a really interesting design challenge and opportunity in terms of thinking about what kinds of experiences do we want to create in retail spaces that are, you know, respectful of the current needs for social distancing, but at the same time give us the opportunity for connection with each other that we all desperately need as humans. So first I want to dive into a couple of experiments that my studio has been working on. So this first one is called Lift. So this is a lighting feature that responds to human activity in its environment. And it uses nitinol, which is a shape memory alloy, to change shape in response to human activity that it sees. So originally, we thought of this as something that might live above a dining room table, but we think it would be really appropriate, say, in a hotel lobby or even in a retail space, to create this kind of magical notion of play in the space and create an experience that people aren't really expecting. So this started out as an experiment in, what could you do if you were to inject some interactivity into an everyday object that people normally think of as inanimate? What kind of experience would you create with that? And this is not really intended to be the center of your attention. It's more something that exists in the background, gives these very nuanced responses to your actions and movement, but it's there for you to play with and discover if you want to. And currently, we're doing a lot of testing, working on turning this into a product that we can sell. We just finally got to the point where we've got these little pedals on this lamp moving up and down at least 1 million times, which was our design goal for this, so that it can work for 5 years without any maintenance. So hopefully before too long, we'll actually be selling this. This next internal project is even crazier. This is called Swarm. Swarm is a series of tabletop robots that drive around on top of a touchscreen display. And these are intended as generic handles for any kind of digital information that you want to use them for. So you can imagine using them to visualize data. You can imagine a DJ playing music where each of these pucks represents a different audio track. In a retail space, you can imagine, say you want to buy a product, which is, say you want to buy a car, and these pucks could represent different options. So you could play with different configurations and understand the features that you'd be getting, the price, and that sort of thing. So all in all, it just comes back to this idea of using physical objects as handles onto digital information. Started to sell this in the context of academic research, but we're really excited to get it into retail spaces as well. So those are two internal research projects to give you a flavor for the kind of work that we do. We're really always trying to push the boundaries in terms of developing new technologies in order to make new styles of interaction with technology possible. We try to keep it focused on the end experience that we'd like visitors to a space to have, and then use that to motivate different kinds of technologies that we'd like to develop. So having shown you a couple of these internal R&D projects, I'd like to show you a few examples of work that we've done for clients. This first one is for La Mer. It's a high-end cosmetics brand. This particular installation that I'm going to show you, this is actually for an event, but I wanted to show it to you anyway because I think that this style of experience, I think there's a lot of opportunity here in terms of permanent activations in a retail space. So the challenge that La Mer had is they wanted to introduce the La Mer brand to Chinese consumers. And so, La Mer is a high-end brand. So they needed to tell the story of their brand to Chinese consumers to help them understand the value of that brand. And so what they did is they rented out a wing of the Shanghai Power Station of Art, which is China's first contemporary art museum. And so the active ingredient in the La Mer skin cream is made from kelp. And so here we have 5 different installations that sort of take you through the story of how this product is made. We're starting at the seashore. And so we walk through this area where there's a projection of water on the floor and the walls, but there's sensors that are sensing your footsteps. And so as you walk through, you're actually causing ripples in the water. And then in this next room, we're underwater. So this is the kelp room. All of the graphics that you see on the screen are dynamically generated, and they respond to the movement of people in the space. So as you walk around in the space, you cause these bubbles to appear on the screen, and you cause the kelp strands to to sway back and forth. And you can check in on WeChat, Chinese most popular social networking platform, and then you'll actually see your little icon appear on the screen. And then in this next room, this is a reference to the sea. We have a circular piece of silk that's about 4 meters across that's suspended in space with fans. And again, their camera is sensing your motion in space. So if you move by this silk, your motion will actually influence the motion of the silk itself. And there are also lighting effects that go along with that. And then from there, we move into the lab room. So in the creation of this cream for La Mer, there were about 5,000 different lab experiments that were done with extracts of kelp. So this is a room kind of symbolizing all of these different experiments that are done, with the kelp extract. And then, of course, there's an opportunity to sample the product. And finally, a video shot by Mario Sorrenti and his daughter Grace Sorrenti, documenting their collaboration with the La Mer brand. So this experience was up for 2 weeks, and over that time, it generated 1 billion with a B social media impressions. And so, I think that this really highlights the power of these kinds of immersive experiences to get people excited about brand, get people to share it online, to create an experience that people are drawn to and really want to come see for themselves. And so, if this is what an experience like this can accomplish in 2 weeks, just imagine if you were to integrate these types of immersive digital media experiences into a permanent retail space. This next project is for Loccitane, another skin care brand, also in collaboration with Schoolhouse. This one is for Loccitane's flagship store in Toronto. And the store has all different kinds of experiential opportunities in it. But I just want to focus on these 2 pods up at the front of the store. A lot of people are excited about VR, but VR has some real challenges in the context of a retail environment. Those challenges are only exacerbated by COVID-19 in terms of hygiene relating to putting these headsets on. So this was an interesting approach to give people that feeling of immersive wraparound video while avoiding some of the pitfalls that you typically see with a VR type of experience. So there are these 2 pods. One's at the center and right of the screen, this image, where you can actually walk inside of, and you'll see this wraparound video. One of the videos is shot from a hot air balloon that's flying over fields of lavender in France. This lavender is an ingredient that's used in a lot of Loccitane's products. And then the other pod is a video about the making of their products. It kind of tells the story of how the product is made. And with both of these, you can reach up and either touch the surface or wave your hand in front of it, and it'll reveal additional layers of content underneath the video that you're watching. So again, a wraparound video experience with just a little bit of interactivity in there as well. The next project I wanted to show you is for LaGuardia Airport. This is one that we actually just finished a few days ago. So This was commissioned by Marshall Retail Group. Marshall Retail Group has shopping, retail stores in airports all over the country. And they have this great opportunity to do retail for the renovation of LaGuardia Airport, which is ongoing. So this space that you see here is in Terminal B of LaGuardia. It's right after you pass through security. So Marshall Retail Group had an interesting challenge here because, you know, if you pass through security, you're probably not thinking, great, where can I do some shopping? You're thinking, how do I get to my flight as fast as possible? So the challenge that Marshall Retail Group has is how can you convince people who've, just gotten through security and they're on the way to their gate to stop for a moment and spend some more time in space where hopefully they'll, stop and buy something. So we created 3 different experiential installations for this space. And one of the things that's really nice about Marshall Retail Group's approach is that they are um, always very careful to reference the local area around the airport where they are building a retail space. So in terms of local products, local artists, and so on. And you'll see that in these activations. So the first one is this LED media wall that you see up at the top there. So as these travelers walk through, they can see their silhouettes on this screen above them. This is actually done not like a traditional LED screen with a dense array of pixels. It's actually only about 250 strips of LEDs that are spaced out vertically. So the client actually made this design decision. They were looking to have somewhat of a departure from, say, a high-res LED screen that you might see in Times Square or something like that. But the interesting thing about the position of this screen is that you walk right under it as you move through this space. But if you want to have a deeper interaction, you can kind of walk to your left or to your right in order to explore it further and kind of get out of the main thoroughfare of traffic, which right now is pretty light, but will get much heavier as air travel starts to pick up again. And so by interacting with this installation, we're really inviting people to stop and explore the space more fully. And the second installation that we did is for the LaGuardia outpost of the Strand Bookstore, a very famous bookstore in Manhattan. So it's not even super obvious in this picture, but if you look closely at the bookshelf, you'll see 6 small screens that appear to be books, but actually they're just images of books displayed on the screen. And if you watch these screens very carefully, from time to time you'll see these very playful little animations of different vignettes of everyday New York life that just play out. Each one is maybe 15 or 30 seconds long. So here you have a bouncer standing in front of a nightclub door and people waiting to get into the nightclub. Just little stories from all around different parts of New York, kind of giving you this kind of little Easter egg that's there if you look for it. And the third installation, this was in collaboration with the graffiti artists, or you could call them aerosol artists from the 5 Points Collective. So 5 Points was a very famous kind of hub for graffiti in New York City, where the owner of the building agreed to let aerosol artists from around the city come and paint murals on this building. And then, unfortunately, these murals were eventually painted over when the building was sold to a developer. What you can do through this experience is you can use the kiosk on the left of this image to select an artist of your choice. And then you take a picture of yourself using the webcam in that kiosk. And then a fancy computer algorithm creates an image with you in it, in that artist's style. And so this video shows some examples of what that looks like. So essentially, the algorithm learns the style of the artist and tweaks the image that you take of yourself so that it matches with that style. And then you can get that image emailed to yourself with the hopes that you'll then post it on Instagram or some other social media. And of course, that comes with branding, inviting people to come shop at the Bowery Bay shops, they're called, at LaGuardia Airport. So, we're creating an opportunity for a really fun experience in the shops themselves, but at the same time, providing some social media coverage to hopefully get other people excited about seeking out this retail space when they have the opportunity to travel through LaGuardia. So that's a brief overview of the kind of work that we do and how it relates to retail spaces. And I just want to add, to wrap things up, speaking with Graham earlier about where things are at the moment and the effects that COVID-19 is having on on our world. One of the things that Graham said that I thought was really interesting is that it's really accelerating a lot of trends that were already starting to happen. And I think that that'll continue to be true. And one trend that I think is particularly relevant in the context of retail is the convergence of architecture, interaction, and advertising. What that means is that a retail space is not just a space where you can come to buy a product, but it's increasingly going to be more and more a space where everything about that space, from the design of the physical space itself to the experiences that you have in that space, is all about telling the story of the brands and communicating the value of the brand and creating opportunities for that story of the brand's value to travel beyond just that physical space and draw more people in to that space in the future. So although it's a really challenging time at the moment, I also think it's a really exciting time. So Graham, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Thanks very much, James. And you can see there how to get in touch with James and with Patten Studio. There are a ton of things there that interested me. But what I want to actually do is to start this Q&A part of this session by asking you how you got into this. What's the history of how you got into doing this amazing kind of cutting edge work with audio and video and technology in public spaces?
Well, it all started at the MIT Media Lab. I was at a conference called SIGGRAPH, which is a computer graphics academic conference many years ago, and I saw some work by a professor named Hiroshi Ishii, and I was just blown away by it. It was all about how we can use the sense of touch and better take advantage of touch when interacting with computers. But what really struck me about the work, although I don't know I could really articulate it at the time, is just the whole aesthetic of it and how there was this value placed on human interaction and human connection through technology. And so I went to the MIT Media Lab and I did a PhD there. And when I got out, I didn't really see any companies doing the kind of work that I was really excited about. I wasn't aware. I mean, I'm sure there were, but I wasn't really aware of them at the time. And so I said, oh, I'm gonna, start my own thing, not having any business experience and, not realizing how challenging that would be. That was back in 2006. And from there, we started out mainly doing work for museums, particularly science museums. And then from there, we got in. First step into the retail space was with fashion in New York City. So doing store window displays for Barney's and some art installations for runway shows. And then we just kind of branched out from there to working with real estate developers for permanent installations for various kinds of commercial and retail spaces. And over time, the types of clients that we work for has become gradually more diverse. But what really ties it all together is using technology in unexpected ways to create new types of experiences.
Yeah, that's a really interesting progression. So, James, you and I met through the TED Fellows program. How did you? So, as a little bit of background to everyone else, TED Fellows is an amazing cohort of people, young entrepreneurs who are changing the world by all sorts of different things, and they're an amazing group of people doing, as I mentioned, just all sorts of different social good things, business things. How did you get involved in all of that?
So a friend of mine, Mitch Joachim, who's a very talented architect, became a TED Fellow, and he said, "This is amazing. You have to do it. You have to apply." And it really has been an incredible experience. Um, I think that probably everyone who is a part of that program feels like they don't really belong and they got in by accident. And, I certainly feel that way, but just the accomplishments of this group are really, it's hard to make a comparison. If you look at kind of any major event in the world today, ranging from major political events to COVID-19 to the fight against cancer to all sorts of things. There are TED Fellows that are working, making great personal sacrifices to really move the needle in terms of what's happening in those areas. And the work that the TED Fellows do is just extremely impactful, and I would say very selfless. I've just been blown away by the kinds of personal sacrifices that people make for others in support of the work they're doing as part of the program. So it's just been an incredible opportunity for me to do some work and some projects that otherwise I think just never would have happened.
Yeah, it is a truly amazing group of people. The people I know through the fellows are doing some of the most amazing work that I've seen in the world. And you also mentioned going through MIT Media Lab, which has got to be just the most amazing experience. I think if I could have my time over again and go to college again, the Media Lab would be the place I'd go. It's just remarkable.
Yeah, the Media Lab is really a magical place. I feel so lucky to have had the opportunity to be there. And, I didn't, I guess when I went in, what I was really excited about is that there were all these new tools and just, the idea that you could kind of make anything you wanted. But what's really special about the Media Lab is also the people, the diversity of perspectives that are there, and the eagerness to share knowledge. Most of the learning that happens at the Media Lab is from other students, which is nothing against the professors. The professors are incredible, But the most powerful learning, I'd say, happens, at 2 in the morning, where you need to learn how to design a printed circuit board, and your friend needs to learn how to program a microcontroller or something, and they teach them, they teach you, and you teach them, and that's kind of the magic of the place. And then in the morning, they look at what you've done and they say, "Wow, that's amazing," and you look at what they've done and say, "Wow, that's incredible." That's it's really a thrilling place to be because of that interchange, and yeah, I really miss it a lot.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I just that's kind of wonderful. I've got my own daughter going to university in a few weeks' time, and I um, kind of wished for her that she's doing something completely different. But if I'd been her, I'd have been kind of pounding down the doors of the media lab.
Yeah.
You mentioned in your talk something. Yeah, there are a number of things that resonated. The first thing was your initial statement, creating experiences that connect people with brands, places, and each other. And the way that you talked about the threat of loneliness and the role of technology in kind of creating that loneliness, and your contention that that needn't be, and technology can be a force for good and connection, as well as um, a force for loneliness and isolation. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, I think that, like any medium, uh, if you think of technology as a medium, the kinds of things that are created with it are just a result of the design decisions made by people who created it. And, I think that part of what's going on is just that doing any creating anything with technology often requires intense focus, and so I think that as a field, it tends to attract people who are maybe more introverted and really want to seek out those periods of often being alone and intense focus. And so as a result, the kinds of things that get created with you know with technology tend to sort of have that value system embedded in them, and that really doesn't have to be that way at all. That's just sort of an artifact of design decisions that have been made, and it took us a while of building different kinds of interactive experiences in order to really be able to articulate this. But we noticed that everything that we were building was intended for groups of people to experience at the same time. And for me, one of the biggest thrills of doing this work is you build the experience and it's up somewhere, and then you just kind of stand there and watch, without anyone knowing that you created this thing, and just to see people having fun with it and having fun together is, to me, one of the most rewarding parts of it. And it took me a while to sort of to be able to articulate, like, oh, that's really one of the key design goals here. But I do think it was one of the things that we were shooting for from the very beginning, although not necessarily consciously. Um, but this there's really so much power if you're thinking about either these more playful experiences, or if you're thinking about technology for work as well. The combination of a group of people with with some sort of interaction that's enabled by technology is just incredibly powerful. Whether you're trying to have fun or whether you're trying to work as a group to solve a complex problem. And there are a series of design principles that we use in order to foster this type of connection in the work that we do. And that's a whole separate hour-long talk. But a lot of it comes with trying to figure out, how people are going to behave in a space anyway, and try to design the technology so that it kind of riffs off of that. And another, guiding principle is this idea of amplified action, which is basically you take something that someone does and you sort of create an opportunity for that action to have a much larger effect. So, as an example, in the LaGuardia Airport installation where you see your silhouette at times, depending on where you're standing, it's actually twice as big as as your actual physical size. And so you're, making someone literally larger than life, and you're creating an opportunity for performance where they feel like, hey, people are paying attention to me, and my actions in this space have a larger impact than they normally have. And that's something that just feels like, really fun, and gets people to let their guard down in a way that, they'll be silly in front of each other. And when you get people being really playful in front of each other, that creates an opportunity for connection.
Well, there's a number of things there. The first thing was the concept. I was originally a research chemist, and the concept of science or technology being good or bad, to me, isn't relevant. Science and technology are. It's just how they're used that's really important. Science and technology can be used for good, for evil, anything in between. And I think it's simplistic to put these labels on. Technology promotes isolation. Well, yes, it can, but it can also promote connection. And another thing that you mentioned that was really interesting, and I'm glad you're able to do, is to step back and watch people interact with what you do. Again, I've spent a lot of time. I was a musician for a long time, and then I also did a lot of live sound. And both when you're producing music and mixing music, it's easy to be focused on the process of doing what you're doing. But the real magic is when you can step back and just see the impact of what you're doing, which is tough to do in the moment. You're so tied up with, is it working right? Is it, and just that step of being able to just step back and say, hey, look, people are using this. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that how easy or hard that is really depends on the type of work that you're doing. And anything with a live performance component, it can be very challenging. Yeah, any type of live performance I've ever been involved with, I've always been convinced that the audience hated it, and so it's challenging sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny that all of these events, like concerts, the TED organization that we're both very involved in, the technology that you use, people interact with it and it seems easy and seamless. And it's kind of like that duck thing or swan or whatever it is, where you're gliding on the surface, but underneath there's all this stuff going on. And we're all so concerned about the stuff going on and how close to breaking the surface that is. But one of the things, and I've worked with you for a number of years now, and I'm very familiar with the technology that goes underneath what you do. But then you actually see it in action, and it just looks beautiful and effortless, and that must be amazing to watch.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's funny because I think that that knowledge of what's going on under the surface often colors my perception of the end product, at least in the short term. And I mean, just like a writer, with their work, I find it really helpful to take some time away and come back to it with a clear head in order to get more perspective on it. But thank you. Yeah, we try to make it, we try to make the technology underneath disappear, in order to, that's not what we want people to focus on. But I think that still sometimes what draws people in is the feeling of magic that technology can sometimes create of, wow, how did they do that? So that is one part of it.
That's a great word, magic. So it's also interesting to hear you talk about fun. And I was watching your presentation thinking, that makes me want to go to LaGuardia Airport. And that's actually not a thought I've ever had before. I mean, it's not the sort of thing. Yeah. And it's not a place that I would have been high on my bucket list of places. But as we come out of this pandemic, and as people, as we're trying to get people when it's safe, but as we try to get people out of their homes back into public spaces, the role of this sort of thing that is so difficult to experience at home, but you can experience at scale in public places, I think is really, really key. So in a sense, the stuff that you're doing now, I think is more important possibly than ever. How do you see it?
Well, it's encouraging to hear you say that. To be totally frank, like many business owners, I think I'm looking at the next few months with some level of anxiety. We'll see, how things go. The way I try to look at it is well, this is an opportunity and it's going to involve some change. And our role is to really just to try to do as much listening as we can and as much observing as we can, and to try to understand what the world needs from us right now. And at the beginning, say, January, February, that sort of time frame, we started getting requests for, well, can you design everything in this experience so that visitors don't have to touch anything? And we said, sure, that's no problem. We can do that. But I think that we are going to need much more dramatic changes than that. And we've been trying to put our heads together and really figure out what are the right changes that we need to make in order to best play the role that you're talking about in terms of I think we're sort of meeting two objectives there. One is drawing people back into retail spaces to to keep the economy going, but also, I just think it's really important for the sort of mental health and happiness of the world for people to really kind of come out of their shells and interact with each other again. This is we're looking. I think that by the time this is over, we'll have really learned a bunch of new habits about what our days are like. Where if we need to buy something, how do we buy that thing? And so we're going to really need to create some really interesting new experiences to persuade people that, hey, maybe I should not just buy everything online. Maybe we should go out to this place that we used to go to and we haven't been to in a while. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but I'm excited about what's possible.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So I want to go back to one of the projects you talked about, which is Swarm, and having been aware of your work for a while now, I remember that you did these things called Thumbles before that were these robots, these little robots that that melded the digital and the physical in a very seamless way. Is Swarm a development from that?
Yes, it's basically kind of the next version of that same system. Just the name Swarm seemed to resonate with people a little bit more than Thumbles. But the idea here, this was inspired by research that I was doing at MIT. The kind of fundamental question is if you're trying to take better advantage of the sense of touch, when you're using a computer. And it turns out there are a ton of different advantages for using more of the sense of touch, ranging from fostering better collaboration between people. Turns out that people learn better when the sense of touch is engaged, and so on and so forth. You know, if a physical object represents data inside the computer, then you know, I guess the first approach we tried is a system called Sense Table, which is basically a table that tracks electronically tagged objects on top of it. And so you would move an object, and then that would cause some sort of effect inside the computer. So just to give a concrete example, we built a chemistry exhibit for a science museum where these physical objects represented atoms from the periodic table. And you could grab, you know, multiple atoms and bring them together, and depending on which atoms they were, you would potentially cause chemical reactions to happen. And so it turns out that that using physical objects in this context caused people in the museum to be, you know, significantly more engaged. There was, I forget the exact numbers, but a researcher from, I'll have to dig out the details, but a researcher from Queensland, Australia studied this, and she compared the amount of time people spent with this exhibit to other neighboring exhibits in the museum, which is the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. And people spent a lot longer with this exhibit, and they were more likely to have a successful result, you know, meaning to actually cause a reaction to happen. And the conclusion that she drew was that, you know, this is due to the use of these physical objects. So the challenge with an interface like that is that it's really a one-way style of control. So you can move the atom on the screen, but the software has to be carefully designed so that the computer never moves the atoms. So that means you cannot have things like undo, you know, load and save and sort and all these kinds of basic things that we think of computers being able to do. So if you make it possible for the computer to move the objects around, you know, move the data around itself, you know, essentially that implies moving these objects around, then you have a much more powerful kind of bi-directional you know, style of interface, and you know, the kinds of things that are possible with that style of interaction, you know, it's just really immense, and we've only scratched the surface of what's possible with that kind of platform. But you know, I think, you know, ranging from things like so you know, just to give you a sample of the kinds of things that have been done with this, NTT Comware used a platform like this to sell computer networks. So computer networks are very complex, and oftentimes it's hard for the customer to understand why they should choose option A versus option B. And so what you can do with the system is kind of bring these pucks together and dial in different parameters, and then you would see the overall performance of the network and that kind of thing. But I think, you know, anything from that to, you know, the buying a car, or you know, selecting a retirement plan, anything where you're sort of trying to make some sort of abstract concept more tangible. This is a platform that's really well suited for it. And you know, we've talked to a few people about you know, using it in a retail environment, and you know, the right project hasn't come along yet, but I feel like there's really a lot of opportunity there. And once we kind of put one example out in the world, I feel like people will start to really see what's possible in the retail context.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because it's really a melding of the physical and the virtual. You have the old-fashioned physical knobs and dials, and you have the kind of modern screen-based stuff, mouse and screen and things. And this really seems to me to be a melding of both, which is more powerful than either. So it's contextually aware. It's got haptic feedback, so that if you try and move something in the wrong place, it kind of pushes back at you, which is instructive in itself. And it makes me think of, and you'll probably remember the music creation software Reactable that used the same thing. And that then takes me back to Björk using Reactable on tour, which then also takes me back to something else you did, which was designing in collaboration with others, I think Kinetic Instruments for Björk. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I used to be in a workspace in downtown Brooklyn with a bunch of other, mainly other graduates of the MIT Media Lab, with other folks as well. And it was really a hotbed of collaboration. And I believe the way this project got started is Björk came to the MIT Media Lab looking for ideas for biophilia tour. And Andy Cavatorta, who was also a graduate of the MIT Media Lab, wound up taking the lead on designing a series of harps called the gravity harps, and kind of put a team together to build these harps in some sort of insane timeline. I think it was like 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something like that. And I wound up doing the electronics and motion control for these things. It was a really interesting project. One of the things that I thought was kind of neat about them is turns out that gravity, so these harps are, I guess they were, on the order of 15 feet long. They were hanging something like 25 feet in the air, when we were developing them. And these, the pendulums were, they would swing back and forth like pendulums, and each one had a series of harp strings, and it would rotate so that each string would, a given note would that corresponding string would move in front of a stationary plucker to play the note. And one of the funny things is that these very slow-moving pendulums would actually move at slightly different speeds depending on where they were in the world. So it's kind of a nerdy detail, but it turns out gravity is slightly different at different places in the world. So when these pendulums got to wherever they were touring at the any particular show, you would have to kind of adjust the weights on each pendulum to get them all lined up, for whatever the gravity happened to be in that, in that particular place. But that was, I guess, one of the first, maybe the first kind of large-scale motion control project that we did. From there, a lot of our other projects wound up using some sort of, kinetic element. That was kind of the first place where we explored that. And we've done lots of things since with like, projectors that spin around like crazy to create different effects, for fashion shows, and, Barney's windows with kinetic sculptures in them. But that was kind of the first, first exploration of that for me. And, it's really striking when you're near some sort of large scale moving object, in your kind of physical proximity, it's really impossible to ignore. People can tune out screens, they can tune out, other media, but some large moving object near you, you're not going to tune that out. And so just the kind of attention that commands is something that I've had fun playing with in other projects since.
Well, that's a whole new level of tuning. That's not kind of standing at the side of the stage tuning a guitar. It's like, I can't even imagine that. Well, I think we're getting to the end of this video section of the podcast. We're actually James and I are going to record kind of a follow-on audio podcast where we'll continue this conversation because there's so many interesting things that Patten Studios have done, from halftime SuperBowl shows to 100-meter interactive video wars for Intel at CES. There's just a remarkable collection of a body of work that you've put together. Before we go from this video section, is there any last thoughts or any last things you'd like to say?
Well, thanks again for the opportunity. I think that this is a really exciting moment that we're in right now, and you know, kind of a really a collective challenge for humankind. And I feel really optimistic about where things are going to go. And I think that this is an opportunity to rethink a lot of different things, and what our day-to-day experience with technology should be is one of those. And so that's really exciting. I encourage people to take a look at our website. There's a lot of other projects on there that we didn't talk about in this brief presentation. So, and I'd love to hear from anyone who has any questions or feedback or ideas.
Yeah, so you can contact James at pattenstudio.com. It's interesting as we go through recording this Surroundscapes series. One of the themes that's coming out is this time we've had to rethink things and how we come back afterwards. And I really hope that we take this time and be thoughtful and come back in a different way. And it's really, really encouraging to hear you talk about your role in helping people do that, and also to hear you, like all of us, are businesses trying to get through this and come out the other side. So there's one element of it which is just getting to the other side, but the other element that is amazing to hear people talk about is how we can make a difference, how technology and our interface between our senses and technology can improve things, can in your case can reduce loneliness and increase connection. So thanks so much, James. This has been another video podcast in the Surroundscapes series, and I hope you tune in and listen to more of these. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you next time.